afternoon, friends. Welcome to today's Love Stories and Wars reading. Chapter 12, Nira's Visit. In the afternoon of the day Hope's party left, Nira took it in her mind to pay Salia a visit. She left little Al-Salah in the care of Balsasar and made her way to Bonson and Salia's rather luxurious tent and called at the door. Salia. "What do you want?" Salia called from inside. "It's Nira. May I come in?" "If you want." Salia's voice was indifferent with a hint of sarcasm. It was clear that she also spoke through tears. Nira entered the tent. There was a hallway of sorts leading into a large main room. Salia was reclining on a luxurious couch. Her face was red and puffy. Tears were streaming from her eyes. She had a wet handkerchief in her hand, and without making any effort to stop crying, she stared straight into Nira's eyes. Salia's eyes were full of anger and malice. "Did she send you to make her excuses?" Salia asked. "Who?" "You know perfectly well who. Your precious baby, Hope. I noticed she didn't have the courage to come and tell me herself why it was okay for her to try to get her husband back by dragging mine away." "No, I suppose she didn't," Nira replied. Salia seemed taken aback that Nira did not rush to Hope's defense. "But she did not send me. I wanted to talk to you." "To tell me that Hope wasn't being selfish? That our cause needs Alva Dene and he is worth all of our lives? That Hope is risking her own life as much as my husband's because Alva matters so much?" "No, I didn't come to tell you that." "I assume that your husband told you something like that. Did it help?" "What do you think?" "I suspect it didn't." "You're a sharp one, aren't you, Nira?" "Well, yes. But that's hardly important right now, is it?" Salia almost cracked a smile. Nira hadn't exactly been making a joke, but it was funny. "So what did you want to talk about?" Nira asked, or Salia asked. "I know we've never been particularly good friends," Nira began, "given our different backgrounds with Hope." "Our backgrounds with Hope?" Salia shouted, jumping to her feet. "I made peace with Hope. I made friends with her. I stood with her at her wedding. She stood with me at mine. Whatever problems we had, I got over them." "Did you?" "Yes. I got the better of her anyway. At least my husband is good looking." "He certainly is." "And you never liked him either, did you?" It took me some time." "Why? Because he once dared to presume that he was good enough for your precious little girl?" "No, that wasn't it, but the reasons are not important." "You wanted to save her for an old man who made a play for you first. I'll bet that makes you feel good. However much everyone else loves Hope, Alva wanted you first." Salia was in a fighting mood, and she was trying hard to get Nira riled up. "Salia," Nira said calmly, "may I please just tell you something? Then you can yell at me and abuse Hope and Alva to your heart's content." "What is it you came to tell me?" "I came to tell you about me. My original country was called Ngan. Before it was conquered by Dahman, I was given in marriage to a young lord when I was 18. Arranged marriage was a custom there, but I was very angry about it. Facing marriage to a man I did not know at all was a frightening enterprise. Anything might happen. Thalia nodded. And what did happen? She asked. Nira smiled. I believe that my husband was the best man who ever lived. He was kind and gentle. He never raised his voice, never gave me an unkind look. He was selfless, and he did everything in his power to make me happy. We are a very different kind of people than Lasanians. Showing emotion was not part of our lives in the way it is here, but he loved me, and I grew to love him very quickly. I must have been the happiest Nanian princess in the history of our people, except, for some reason, in the 4 years of our marriage, I never conceived a child. He always assured me that I would. We were still very young. But then Dachman came. My husband had to fight. As a lord, he was a captain in the army. He led his men against an enemy that was impossible to defeat because he believed it was the right thing to do. He was killed. I won't tell you about my life between the time we were conquered and the day Hillel bought me in a slave market, but they were dark and difficult days. The worst of all, of course, was the loss of my husband. I see where this is going, Thalia interrupted. Because of hope, my husband's fight is not hopeless, and even if he dies, at least I will have a baby. Maybe that should make me feel better, but it doesn't. I'm sorry. Thalia, Nira replied, I didn't come to preach you a sermon. I just wanted to tell you I understand. Thalia threw herself into Nira's arms with fresh sobs. I want him back, Nira, she wailed. I just want him to come home. I know, darling, Nira said, stroking the shorter woman's hair. I know. Chapter 13. Hindran's Escape. When are you thinking we should try to escape? Cholin asked. Tonight, Hindran replied. Cholin looked very surprised. Are you up for it? Hindran asked. I've got to get out quick because I'm pretty sure there is a torture session in store for me pretty soon, and I'd just as soon be fashionably absent. I don't know, Cholin said. I'm not much of a fighter. What would you have me to do? Can you walk through the front door if I open it for you? Yes, but you think the guards are just going to wave us on through? I think the guards are going to be dead. Cholin raised his eyebrows in a questioning way. This is the sloppiest, worst garden prison I've ever heard of, Hindran said. They don't have nearly enough guards to really manage it, so they let people inside do what they want. Funny, because they have more than enough manpower to guard it, but I figure they think that the land around us is so full of camps of soldiers that no one who escapes will get far. They also probably think that most of the people who end up here are so downcast by the darkness in this land that they have no motivation. They should have given better thought to me as an exception, seeing that I'm fresh from Lasani, but they didn't. Al-Saladineh, Alva's father, always said, when your enemy makes a mistake, exploit it right away. So how are you going to exploit the mistake? I walked around this place all afternoon, using the windows in some of the inner cells, the ones that face outside. I got a good understanding of how this place operates. There are 2 guard towers near the front gates with crossbowmen, and only 2 guards in front of the gate. They figure it's enough because men can't break down the gates with no tools, and anytime they are opened, there is an armed escort bringing in prisoners or food. It's really simple. Their reasoning seems pretty sound to me. When it's good and dark, you are going to stand near the front gate, and in less than 10 minutes I'll open it for you. If I don't, you will have lost nothing. Are we telling anyone else? No. We can't take a chance on there being sieges, especially since I have enemies here already. But we will leave the gate open. That way men will eventually notice. Some will probably be brave enough to try their own escape. That will muddy up the job of finding us. How will we avoid capture? There is a stable outside the prison where the guards' horses are kept while they're on duty. Can you ride? Yes, I think so. But won't we be a little conspicuous? Not in guard uniforms. Anyone will think we are off-duty guards headed home. We'll head west. No one will expect that. We'll find us a good hideout and then start building a vagabond army to help oppose Dachmann from within. Just so I'm clear, Holland said, you are going to kill the 2 front guards with no weapon of your own? No, I'm going to climb to the top of the outer wall and kill 2 crossbowmen. Then I'll have 2 crossbows to deal with the guards. Apple pie. Are you coming or not? If you really can get the front gate open, I'll come along. If we have guard uniforms, it shouldn't be hard to fall on a sword before we are captured. That isn't any worse than what I've got here. Once Hendren thought it was sufficiently dark, he went to a spot he had discovered in his wanderings that afternoon. If no one was watching, the wall could be scaled rather easily and one could gain access to the wall above. He climbed up and immediately flattened on his belly on the wall. If the man in the closest guard tower had looked at exactly the right place, he would have seen him. But this guard was leaning back against the wall on one side of his tower closest to Hendren. Not much vigilance, Hendren thought. This is going to be too easy. Hendren silently shimmied on his belly along the wall to the tower. When he reached it, he slowly got his feet under him in a crouching position. The man was still leaning on the wall with his back toward Hendren. Hendren thought he might have fallen asleep. He slowly stood up, and then with lightning speed, he laced his right arm around the man's neck from behind, putting him in a choke. The man thrashed and kicked for a few seconds, then went unconscious. Hendren held the choke for a few more seconds to make sure he was dead. He let the guard's limp body fall into the tower, and then hopped in himself. He could just see the man in the next guard tower about 200 paces away. He was walking back and forth but had not noticed anything. Apparently he was not listening for sounds. Hendren picked up the dead guard's crossbow and aimed it at the guard. As the man turned back to face him in his pacing, Hendren could just make out the outline of his head. He aimed the crossbow dead center of where his face would be and pulled the trigger. The arrow pierced the man's brain, and he fell dead on the spot. Hendren reloaded his crossbow, then threw a quiver of arrows over his shoulder. He then hopped out of the tower he was in and ran silently along the wall to the other tower. He took that guard's crossbow and quiver as well. Not far from this tower, he found that there was a ladder on the outside wall to allow the guards to climb up and take their positions. He crawled on his belly over to the ladder and looked down. He laughed to himself that there was no one guarding the ladder. It was roughly 200 paces from the front gate, where the 2 guards stood in conversation, not keeping much of a watch. Should the guards see him climbing down the ladder, his job would be more difficult, but they would not see him unless they were looking for him. Not even much light here, Hendren thought. After climbing silently down the ladder, he took a crossbow in each hand and walked silently in the direction of the guards. When he was within 10 paces, one of them saw him, and they turned to face him with a start. "Hello, boys," he said, and then discharged both crossbows at once, putting an arrow in each one of the men's head. Shooting for the heart was too risky when the men wore breastplates, but his aim was good enough to put arrows between the men's eyes. He then found the key on one of the dead men's bodies and opened the door and found Holland waiting for him. "Evening, brother," he said. "Ready to go?" Hindren and Holland put on the dead guards' uniforms. They now each had a sword and dagger as well as a crossbow. They left the spears for any other escapees, as these would usually stay at the prison and might raise questions if anyone on the road saw them carrying them. They silently made their way to the stable. There was a groom who watched the horses. He wore no armor. Hindren shot him in the heart immediately. "Too bad killing a groom," Holland said. "Can't be helped," Hindren said. "We can't have him saying what happened. Anyway, he was Dachmonian, like all the others on duty here. They probably figure Hurons might be too sympathetic to the prisoners." "Do all Dachmonians need to die?" "No, but that one did. Now let's go." They saddled 2 horses and began to gallop away. The other guards on the other sides of the prison had no idea what had happened. Hindren and Holland would have some time before anyone would pursue them. Hindren had some idea of Huron geography because Alva had insisted that every soldier study maps of Huron. They headed west toward the Christora River, planning to cross it and find a lonely hideout. "Somebody's going to be disappointed tomorrow," Hindren said cheerily.